You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching the Meta Show.
And we're live. All right, here we are. Welcome everybody to another wonderful Saturday. It is fantastic outside, and hopefully it is fantastic inside. We have Jay and Asher, our guests today. No boat, unfortunately. I have been left to try to shepherd us forward all on my own, which means that, well, if anything happens, it's my fault. Thank you, Almost Tape. Already we're getting some subscribers. Here we are. How are you doing today, Asher?
I'm pretty well. Thank you for asking. Thanks for having me on the show. Always a good time.
And Jay, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
We are.
Why is that funny?
You're just our most charismatic person in the Imperium.
It is really kind of a funny thing whenever, when we're behind closed doors. Jay talks perfectly normally, but as soon as we get on a live broadcast, it does seem like
he claims he's super gregarious when he doesn't think anyone's listening.
It's because if I fuck up now, then everyone hears it. But if I fuck up like in a meeting, there's only like 5 people that are going to hear it.
I thought he just respected his elders.
Oh, I see how it is.
I included myself in that one, so I think it's fair.
That's true. Well, we're getting a lot of resubs here. I appreciate that, guys. Thank you very much. The funny thing about me hosting is that when people resub or donate or things like that, it actually sets off a noise in my ear from the notifications. So if I get a little distracted, that's why. 41 months with the Sadist. Jesus. Hey, hey, ho, ho, where's Boat for the boat show? Well, Boat apparently is eating delicious chicken, he was saying, and throwing water balloons.
Fight. Yeah.
He was having a water balloon fight, which I imagine he'd win. Yeah.
How many food fights do you think Boat has been in and won in his life?
If you could be a professional food fighter, I think that it would be Boat.
I've never thought of a job he's more suited to.
That are eating competitions. Like he's not. The thing about Boat is that he's not actually fat, but he's like, he's got that stocky wrestler build. But they're these like little dudes who go and they do eating competitions, and I'm surprised. Like I bet Boat could demolish people in both water balloon fights and in eating competitions.
I was watching this YouTube channel a couple of months ago, and I got super into it. It was like this dude who does eating competitions, and he was like the skinniest dude ever. He was been like 130 pounds. But he just like won these eating competitions, and it was nuts. Like he was doing them back to back as well.
Kobayashi, the Japanese guy?
No, it was an American dude.
I remember seeing somewhere, I forgot where it was, but someone explaining how that works, and it's sort of like the same thing as like sword swallowing. You essentially figure out how to turn off your gag reflex and just open your throat and just, shove everything down there. So there's probably an interesting overlap.
Our enemies have often accused you of being an excellent sword swallower, so I'm not surprised to hear you know a little bit about it.
Yeah, I got to see whether I've missed my calling this entire time. Luminal Flux, thank you very much. 37 months, goddamn. All right, so we've got kind of this is so far just an excellent show is us talking about gag reflexes and swallowing things. It's been, we're not going to lie to you, it has been a relatively quiet week in Eve. We have about 7 different items to discuss, but we're sort of in that pause, I think, before there's a huge conflict or something. Well, let's go ahead and let's kick it into the top story here. Let me press the button and play an animation. That's always exciting. Alrighty. So our top story is, and we've got a question here from Adam Mofo: is the Imperium ever going to deploy its full force of war, Mitarni?
Is that,
Mitarni.
did he tip his fedora at you, Matarni?
Mitarni. Mitarni. No, we're never going to deploy our full force of war. We're really just going to stay in Delve. In fact, right now there is no deployments of the Imperium at all. We just sit around and delve and mine all day, to the point that this was not for the top story, but to the point that CCP is actually adding a set of drone implants named Bumblebees just for us. It actually might not have anything to do with us, but it probably does. But yeah, let's talk about deployment and war. And the closest thing we have to that right now is the potential for a galaxy-spanning war between PL and NC. And Skill Yourself and FRT and Triumvirate versus Test and the Legacy Coalition.
Before we get into that, the Bumblebee thing, have you looked at the full name of the implant?
No, I haven't.
It's the Bumblebee Tuner.
It's Bumblebee Tuner?
It's
Tuna?
It's a joke from, what was that? Ace Ventura. It's an Ace Ventura joke, I think.
Oh,
Remember
I
Bumblebee
see.
Tuna from that movie? It's the Bumblebee Tuner.
God.
Yeah, 30-year-old references. Thanks,
Wow. Well, I mean, it's the appropriate demographic. I mean, the average age of an EVE player is basically my age now, so like almost.
Have
40.
we ever done a survey in the Imperium to see? I mean, we did a wealth survey, but we ever done like a demographic survey?
No, we haven't. That would be kind of interesting. The only thing I know about the statistics for the median age comes from my now no longer NDA'd, because it's been longer than 5 years, knowledge from my time on the CSM.
They released that stuff at FanFest. That's out in the public.
Okay.
Like the average age is like I think 29, and the median is 31. I think that's what it was. And this was a few years ago, so it could be higher now.
Things might have gotten younger when we were. I mean, it's possible actually, because I remember there was sort of a cultural shift when like the first group of like edgelords really sort of came into, like the tissue guys really came into EVE, and it seemed like they were a lot younger. When at around 2010, the median age was 36. So if they released a report a couple years ago saying the median age was like 31 or 29, it sounds like there was an influx of much younger players that like tuned things down. The next generation. That's curious.
Yeah, Mike Flood is pulling down the average all by his lonesome.
Yeah, that's all right. Interesting. But yeah, Asher, do you? I know that you and I know that Jay has been paying attention to what's been happening with the test PL potential drama. Are you up to speed on it? I'm not sure who I should point the finger at here. I
think you can talk to you. But the thing that's most notable is it's unnotable right now. Like there was a Keepstar drop by Test and Imminency to sort of counter it. But I mean, here's something, and I know you know this. Before each war, like each group tries to stake out how little they care about it and how little they're going to contest it. And this is a strategy to prove that you're like to demoralize the other side, right? And I guess demoralize isn't the wrong word, but not to get them anti-hyped. So all the groups now are trying to say, oh, we're not going to fight over it, blah blah blah. The only one who's actually going hard is Billy. And he's saying it, we're going to go all out. It's blue ball or Helldunker blue balls. It's actually funny because Billy sounds like he just has a recording of you from 40 years ago, and he's just tracing over it with his voice. And the Tri and Holy Roman Empire and all these guys who were involved on the other side, they're all like, oh yeah, dude, it's just a fun deployment. And we don't really care. It's just for the lulls.
Oh,
and they honestly sound like Elise from 4 years ago. Like it's like watching history repeat itself, just in a slightly different place with slightly different names.
That is kind of funny. Like the fact that most of the rest of the galaxy used to shit on us for saying Helldunker blue balls, and it was like, oh, the Imperium sucks because it's only Helldunker blue balls. And I saw, I guess this was like a month ago, Manny, of all people, talking about Helldunker blue balls, and now you have Villy talking about Helldunker blue balls. So now it's okay for everybody else to do it, guys. You can adopt the strategy from Goonswarm of Helldunker blue balls, and I guess it's just fine now.
The reason they did it is like is they had nothing to fight for. Like the only thing they were fighting for was the fight itself. But now, and I'm talking about laughing at Helldunker Blue Balls. But now that all these guys own space and are building supers and are having Rorqual miners, they've all adopted it because it is the best way to win a fight.
Suddenly they got skin in the game. Yeah.
Exactly. And for things like our Northern SIG deployment, where we don't have any skin in the game, where we just are in a station, that's where we fight outnumbered. We'll take those fights because we're just in it for the fight. So it's weird how that changes, but how it's like when you actually have something that you care to protect, your attitude suddenly changes to the optimal path.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, back in the day, the bad guys who were pointing fingers at us and how dare we deny them content, which, once again, this always just kind of makes me a little bit mad just thinking of it as some random shitlord coming to our space and daring to wag their finger at us and say that we owe them anything, because we don't owe our enemies anything. We never have. They are our enemies. That means that they should simply vanish and fuck off and attack somebody else. We don't owe anybody content. And it makes me angry when people feel entitled to anything from our people, right? Our people don't owe our enemies anything. Not that I rant about this or anything, but when you actually have stuff to protect, when you have a tribe to defend, when you have assets to defend, it is the optimal strategy. And so I guess it's nice to see the shoe on the other foot. But what's curious about this also with the Keepstar deployment, they put it down. Test put down this Keepstar in Euro Prime, which was not optimal. But what it did earlier in the week was essentially force everybody to see who would be Test was throwing a party. And I think this was a strategy by Villy. I don't know whether it was conscious or not, but it was essentially forced everybody who was going to be involved in that fight to show up. Right. So, did Test even get Horde to show up on their side?
No, they were thinking about it. However, they didn't really need to. Everyone was.
We sent like 2 or 3 Baltic fleets. I think
we didn't even form. We
really?
didn't even form.
Really?
just the thought
I was
of us
traveling at the time.
And
really?
going was enough to stop them.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that might have been one of the things that took the air out of the tires here. I think that Villy is right. I think that the group of people who are forming up against Legacy Coalition are trying to pull a casino war, but without the money or the backing of a casino war. I think PL and NC. Is heavily involved in this. I think that anything that Skill Yourself is saying about how they're not involved and they're totally not, that it's totally not an anti-test gangbang. I think it's horseshit. I think that they were just trying to play the same, like Asher was saying a few minutes ago. It's just the same shit from 4 years ago. So now everybody knows that Goonswarm will turn up to help defend Test against PL and NC. And the people that are totally not involved with PL and NC. So that might have, slowed things down a bit. I don't know. What do you think, Jay?
I'm not sure. On one hand, I'm like, helping Test would be a good thing for us to do, but on the other hand, I'm like, why do they need our help, and what have they done to deserve our help? I know we've got the whole NC.PL thing, but this isn't against NC.PL. Obviously, if PL and NC. Show up to timers, then we'll start getting involved more, but for now, I'm happy to just leave it as it is.
Yeah, it's really not the kind of thing, like, if it was more heavily involved from PL and NC. You could see that. The challenge, I guess, is that PL and NC. Like to use proxies that are totally not involved with them, which is the same shit from the Casino War. But the other thing about this is, like, with, Test has gotten really innovative in terms of being on the front line of using aggressive Titan-based strategies to defend their space, and they've got a shitload of faxes, so... as long as Villy and Test are taking it seriously, I don't think that they really need any help from us. Or would they want help from us? I don't think, it would just be sort of pointless. I don't know. Who are the dramatis personae? Like, if PL and NC. Are not involved in this, who are the ones that are claiming that they're in the front line? Is it really just Triumvirate and Fraternity? Is it the Skill Yourself guys? Like, who are the players currently?
You've got Skill Yourself and Volta, and then you've got FRT, and like the Winter Coalition, pretty much. Those are the only 2 people who are involved right now. I don't think Triumvirate's too involved, although that they're sort of working with Skill Yourself and FRT quite a lot. So
Isn't it weird how all the shine has gone off of Frat and Winter Coalition in the last 6 months? Like 6 months ago, they were the cause celeb. They were the darlings of pretty much everyone. Like, these guys will fight over anything. They had a great attitude, and it's quickly gone from like that sort of admiration of that to these guys are total idiots and they feed all the time very quickly.
yeah, like their CEO has lost like 2 Nixes in the past like 2 weeks trying to like solo drop test Radders. So
that's the problem when you're a figurehead, is if you do something, it can have a hugely outsized impact on how people perceive you and your organization.
I think it really was like the big excitement around fraternity, I think, came from the Serenity influx, right? The idea that there was going to be this massive influx of Chinese players onto Tranquility and that they were going to shake everything up. And in many ways they did, but you know, Goodswarm ended up with such a large proportion of those people that it wasn't really a scenario where you had like one Chinese player powerhouse alliance, right? There was more of a distribution of Chinese corporations
yeah, so
across the game.
everyone was talking about how when they came over, it would be the English speakers and the Russian speakers versus the Chinese, and then the Chinese started siding with NCDOL and Skill Yourself, all those people, and then it was like, oh, they're just another alliance.
It turns out the Chinese aren't a monolith, just like the Russians could not. They were for a little bit, but it's not a metastable position. Eventually, it's going to degenerate, and it's the same thing as saying like an American alliance would be all one group. Can you imagine that? Like that wouldn't happen either. So it's the same for all those guys, I think.
Still believe in a US TZ alliance run by Ron Mexico and Asher Elias.
Oh my goodness.
That would be pretty ridiculous. Let's see. I'm trying to think about where we want to go next. We actually have a fair number of like null-sec things. I've pressed the top story. Do we want to move on and start talking about some of the other random shit that's happening in null? I kind of want to.
This war hasn't really kicked off yet, so it's probably something where we just set it on the table and we're looking at what's happening, and maybe in a week or two there's gonna be more to talk about. But until then, I think there's some final timers that are going to start coming out this week, so we might see some more action. It'll be interesting. It'll be.
I guess tomorrow there's a timer actually for FRT staging system in Mincy,
Right,
L1 K1.
I think that's correct. So those will be time 2 Chinese time zone, right? So we can see how they,
this is like 1000 Eve, I think.
Yeah, so we can see how test shows up, how much allied support they get, and if they dial all the bat phones. All that information will be really interesting to see.
Well, tomorrow, 10 o'clock Eve. Well, of course, I guess for if you're an American, that's more like 3 in the
5
morning.
a.m.
Yeah, 5 a.m. something like that. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Let's go ahead and move on to. I have all these buttons to press. Whenever I host the show, it's sort of a different thing. It's like, wow, now I get to be the person who does these things. So let's go to the Null-sec Power Hour. Let's press a button. Here we go. Alrighty, here we are. We have pressed the button. We are now on the other side of the button press. It is the Null-sec Power Hour.
Do you guys ever shout unlimited power like you're the Emperor from Star Wars?
God.
I do that a lot.
I should.
Shower.
I think that would be
shower now.
The power shower instead of a power hour. That would be great.
Ranger Regiment, which is a Chinese group that has become renters for GTG, they just lost 2 Fortizars and Teniferous, like the legacy Fortizars, the ones that just got converted.
Did you see Johnny Ra has top damage on one of them?
But I am somehow surprised by
it. Yeah.
Oh my God, is he in Legacy now?
He's in Brave.
Oh wow. Wow, Johnny Raw, that brings me back. Okay, yeah, that's another example of the amazing Chinese influx that was instead of having everybody going to fraternity, you had a number went to Goonswarm, and a number of Chinese players went to Ranger Regiment, which pretty much disintegrated. Like, if I remember correctly, when Ranger Regiment announced that they were going to go to Guardians of the Galaxy, like there was a failure cascade for the ages, right? It was just this cliff.
They had like 3,000 members, then they announced they were going to join GOTG, and it went down to like 1,500.
That is amazing.
But they were part of Winter Coast, so they were originally allied with Fraternity. So something soured in that relationship. So even the Chinese players that initially stuck together in the Fraternity group ended up not being, not sticking together. Here's something I've thought about a lot: is like, remember when Brave Newbie started getting big and they just went through a series of awful leaders? It might be like that for the Chinese people as well. Like the people who are in leadership positions now just happen to inherit them by luck. They were one of like 500 Chinese people who were playing on the server on this server before the changeover or something. So they were in position. That doesn't mean they're qualified or anywhere near the best people to do it. But there's no way to like make sure that the most, the person who has the most merit at being a leader is actually the one who will be the one, that's there at first. And you could have a situation like Brave where these people end up going through a bunch of bad leaders before they find out, who is actually skilled and qualified. On the other hand, it could be 5 years from now, and by that point, any chance to unify will be totally gone.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, of becoming a group that is large enough to have, like if you start as an ethnic alliance, right? When I say an ethnic, it could be ethnic or nationalistic alliance. I refer to, like in the early days of EVE, Red Alliance. Before there was really a lot of Russian players, Red Alliance was the place you went when you were Russian. There was a Bulgarian organization, and if you were Bulgarian, you just played in the Bulgarian group. And then that makes it really easy to have a language group or nationality based organization, because if there's only one place to play where people speak your language, that's where you go, and that makes them very hard to destroy. Like it's really pretty much impossible to make a small
we have
ethnic
we have
org failure
clubs in
cascade.
Eastbourne that are like that, like language based,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been together for like 10,
10
15
years,
years
yeah,
now.
exactly. So like a lot of the Hungarians are in Gunstorm now. But they've been in other alliances and stuff like that. But what you saw with both Red Alliance way back in the day, this is starting around 2008, and what you also started to see now with, I think, the Chinese alliances, is once you get a large enough group of people, it's no longer unique, right? It's no longer enough to be like, well, I'm Chinese or I'm Russian, so I'm in the one thing. You have enough choice to have, there's like 5 or 6 or more different organizations with that language group or nationality, and then you just see a disintegration. Like Red Alliance split into Against All Authorities, and then it split into Solar Fleet and Legion of Death, and Nink's various organizations over the years. What was the name of Nink's first splinter group? They had territory down in Faith Abilis, and we fought over complexes with them. Anyway, and then of course later became Out of Sight many years later. Different organization with Nink. But yeah, you can see that just the factionalism sort of spreads as these things happen. And I guess that's what happened with Fraternity, is that you got enough of a influx from the Chinese player base that it went past the monolithic organization stage and went directly into the sort of spread out phase.
One of the problems is
Red Overlord, that's right, almost
the
Tate. Thank you.
space that the FRT are currently in. Tests are hitting it with, they're hunting their radders and whatnot. So you've got new players that are used to playing EVE. These aren't new to EVE players. These are players that have come over from a different server. They know how to make the money. They know how to crab and whatnot. And they can't do that. So where do they go? They go to a safe landing space, which is us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if I was going to start Eve, but I was going to be like, if I had to, like, if there was Tranquility 2 and suddenly everybody was sent over to Tranquility 2, and you knew that you needed the big boy toys, you knew that you needed to establish an income stream, and you weren't like just a complete newbie, it makes sense that you would go to a place where you could just immediately start building up your economic engine to fund a war machine. Like, step one isn't like, oh, well, I was just started to play Eve, but I know what I'm doing, and I'm just going to start flying battleships. Like, that just doesn't work. So, well, let's talk about other ways of making money. This is a unsubtle segue. Instead of, I could go to the Delve time units thing, but I'm actually going to skip over that. We'll come back to Delve time units in a moment. Let's talk about other ways of making ridiculous amounts of money for, in this case, doing absolutely nothing. We touched on this briefly last week, which is the Star Citizen versus EVE Online drama. I haven't installed Star Citizen in like a couple of years. Like when they had one of the first playable builds, I installed it and I like ran around the hangar and I looked at the Hornet or Super Hornet or whatever the stupidly expensive crowdfunding bullshit machine that I had bought for like $150 like an idiot. Um, and since then I haven't touched it. Apparently there is a theoretical game there now. But one of the funny things that I saw, I don't know if you guys have noticed this today, or at least within the last couple days, CCP has released a skin package for the Venture called the Venture Capitalist. And let me dig this up. This was over here posted on Reddit. I'll copy this link and drop it in chat. I don't know if this will actually work because it's directly from the Reddit image server. But yeah, the Venture Capitalist bundle has a snarky comment about beware of vultures swooping in to loot your assets. The vulture, of course, being the venture knockoff bullshit. Yeah, I really don't know. I remember when this game first came out, or at least the idea of this game came out, that a lot of goons were interested in it. I mean, any kind of space game where you can run around and murder people, and I grew up playing the fucking Wing Commander games. But it is, I don't know, I'm shocked that they are still able to sell wallpaper. Like they're literally just taking a piece of concept art and saying you can download this image of a spaceship and feel ownership of it for like $130 or something at the low end. It is just stunning to me that that's even a thing. I don't know. Do you guys know? I mean, what are your takes on Star Citizen? Do you guys have any
So Wing
views?
Commander 1 was the very first game that that I ever played on a PC. So, and I loved it. I love Chris Roberts, but he is the ultimate in someone who needs someone to tell him you've got to finish this. He has never finished a game on his own, and he never will. And it's like these people are just feeding crack to a crack addict. He won't stop himself. So there's a famous quote. I think it's misattributed to P.T. Barnum, but it's like no one ever lost money betting against the intelligence of the American people. And I don't know who actually said it, but that's kind of how I feel against Star Citizen. The guy, I mean, they're just raking in the money with no signs of stopping, and until he goes bust, until the company goes bust, it will not be published in a playable form and like as a real game. He just needs someone to tell him to finish. And like, when you're a creator like him, you don't want that. Like, even though you need it, you don't want it. And he's just been enabled by this new form of publishing that probably will never happen again.
It's as Arindus points out here in chat, that quote probably comes from H.L. Mencken. Yeah, it is amazing. Like the guy has, if he was doing this on Wall Street, we saw this with Theranos, actually, a unicorn company for amazing blood testing that was totally going to change everything and turned out to be literally just a scam. And, those people are going to jail, Elizabeth Holmes.
Elizabeth Holmes, yes.
And that crew.
Elizabeth Holmes, yeah.
Yeah. But the funny thing about the Theranos scam and the gaming industry is, Wall Street is pretty experienced with scams and investor scams. I mean, people, it's hard to tell the difference between a product that is stupid to invest in but isn't a scam versus an outright fabricated scam. So when I'm going to compare Theranos here, which was literally like, hey, we have a magic blood testing thing. They got billions of dollars and it was literally just horseshit, versus my favorite example of stupid investment is the Juicero, where it's like, hey, we're going to make a 4-ton press for juice bags and it's going to cost $700 for basically a Keurig machine for juicing. But then it turns out that you could actually just squeeze the Juicero bags yourself and you didn't even need to buy the Juicero. And, those guys got like north of $45 million worth of investment to produce the stupidest fucking juice machine ever. But it wasn't a scam, right? Like they actually produced the juice, and the CEO apparently is now into unfiltered natural water because he just really likes to sneak into creeks, and he's like a raw food idiot. He's like, oh, I want my milk unfiltered. I want to drink water that isn't purified. It's just nuts. So where I'm going with this is the games industry is immature. It is a relatively new industry, and I don't believe that we have seen something on the scale of Star Citizen before. So Chris Roberts basically has a license to print money. He has found out that he can just sell dreams to people and they will keep paying for it. Unlike in Wall Street, I don't think that there's going to be a reckoning. Like the guy can just have it crash and burn and shrug his hand, shrug his shoulders. I don't think that the feds are going to go after him. I don't think that there's no violation of any law or anything like that. The guy has found, this is for a lot of people, this is the dream. The dude has figured out a license to print money, and that is just fucking crazy.
I was hiking once, and I took a drink out of a creek. That was like a little creek, and I was had a drink of the water, and then I rounded the bend, and there was a dead deer in the middle of it. So I had an unfiltered water experience too.
Yeah, that's according to Luminal Flux here. The people working for Juicero were looked down upon by the founder and his cohorts if they ate cooked food.
Wow.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, this that's an example of a problem that solves itself. Like that guy is just going to die of dysentery soon enough if he's drinking unfiltered water. He's going to get an perfectly natural, organic parasitic infection that will kill him in a natural, organic way.
I
But
agree with you. I don't think Star Citizen's being developed in bad faith. It's not a scam. It's foolishness. There's a difference.
yeah,
And it's to quote my favorite Reverend Al Sharpton quote, it's hubris. Chris Roberts has a development, like he has vision. He's like George Lucas in that way, and that he has like his vision is good if it's edited by someone else. But as soon as Marcia Lucas was gone, and as soon as Chris Roberts doesn't have a publisher, he's out off the rails.
yeah, it's like once Robert Jordan in the Wheel of Time novels, and even George R. R. Martin. Like after a certain point, like once they become popular and successful as authors in like fantasy and sci-fi, they just suddenly there's that moment you can tell when the creative has more power in the relationship than their editor. And
Yeah.
suddenly it's just all of this stuff that would normally like there's this rule called kill your darlings or murder your babies in writing and in creative stuff in general. It's like the stuff that you think is really 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 clever is actually probably not that clever and it should probably be edited out. um, and I do think he's working in good faith. It's just this is the justification. I don't know what this is like. I have not figured out how to just tell people give me money and have them give me shitloads of money. It sounds like that would be pretty cool, but it would be interesting if you are Chris Roberts and you're like, well, there's lots of people who are criticizing me, but on the other hand, every time I do anything or say anything, I literally make millions of dollars. Like that's a really good internal
Yeah.
justification. It is hard for you to accept outside criticism when you're like, well, I could be wrong, but what I'm doing is literally making millions of dollars every time I fart and I
just
slap
came
a
up with-
price tag on it.
I just came up with the litmus test to tell if investing in Star Citizen or another thing like that is a good idea. You should look at it and say, would I be better off buying lottery tickets? Because lottery tickets are a horrible investment, but right now I think your money would be more well spent on buying lottery tickets than Star Citizen ships.
I think that's exactly what happens. Erection Frog said, Imperium News, isn't that what happens whenever Matani tells us to play a new game? We don't do that anymore. It turns out that we were thinking about ways of branching out between organizations to try to establish the Imperium on multiple games in case CCP flipped a table and went bankrupt. But we are out of that. But that's a fair criticism. I guess I was just not as good at doing things like that as Chris Roberts. And it really is curious. Like the guy has managed to. I guess it was because of the credibility that he built up with the first few games. Like he can just say anything and get away with it. It's nuts.
I wouldn't mind us doing that again. Like I enjoyed playing. I didn't really like H1Z1 the game, but I enjoyed playing it with goon friends. Like
PlanetSide 2 was a lot of fun. Like invading
Yeah.
PlanetSide 2, that was like a good fit, I thought. The Archeage guys also like went insane. Like when we invaded Archeage, like the people who got really into Archeage, like I found that on a weekly basis I was sorting out more drama with like Imperium and Archeage guild infighting than you guys think that Eve is dramatic. Like Archeage makes Eve like look like fucking Child's Play, but it's all like that small like micro level guild drama stuff, not tens of thousands of people.
I think the problem, at least for me, is that we're with Six and Squads. We're like so busy up north that like I don't know if I have a lot of free time for other games.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's segue into that. That's an excellent one there, Asher. Thank you. So let's there are things that are happening in Eve. Not only the FRT and test, not yet a fight, but it might be a fight thing. But we have returned Sigs and Squads to the north, and do we want to brag on Boat here for a second? Talk about that thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So Boat came up with what is it called? The National Goon Surveillance Agency. I believe that's what he calls it.
NGSA.
What's that, Shay?
The NGSA, the National Goon Surveillance Association.
Ah, there you go. I'd actually forgotten you were here because you hadn't talked for about 30 minutes.
I was here for like all of that, but I had to go like run to the door real quick.
I understand. When Mittens I get going, like him and I don't have enough airtime, like just for each other. So the guy who doesn't want to butt in probably never will. So he came up with this idea, and basically it's like it's sort of like crowdsourcing goons as cloaky campers. Instead of doing it within like a SIG or a squad and something like that, it's just like saying, hey, if you want to come cloaky camp up in the north, you should join up, and we'll like Wild make a really cool website where it assigns you a system, and you just go to that system and you report what you find. If you get something to kill, you get paid for it. So like there's payouts for like Rorks and carriers and stuff like that. But the funny thing is that apparently what GTG has done is just decided that the best way to do it is Helldunks or Blue Balls with their ratting. So they just have stopped ratting. I mean, there are procure mining and there is some VNIs, but that's essentially it. There's no real ratting or mining going on otherwise. And the numbers in Declan are really bad. It'll be interesting to see because we left for 2 weeks. They claimed victory. They said CO2 drove us out. Even though they knew, we announced at the very start it was just a 2-week break, but they told their line members we were gone. I don't know why. I know it's been amazing to see. Like I get to see the internals on these guys a lot because of the Black Hand. It is amazing to see how duplicitous they are. And
if you're worried your people are going to leave, though, you'll tell them anything, right? Like if you're worried that your core group of people are potentially going to leave, then you will tell them anything.
You've hit it. Like, yeah, if someone has the proverbial gun to your head, you're going to say whatever you want. It's why it's why people say whatever they want in torture. And I know this is not anywhere near as serious as that, but it's the same psychological thing. Like you have nothing to lose because if you're honest, they leave, and if you lie, they might stay, and then you deal with that later on down the road. Like that's the idea, at least, right?
That's very short-sighted because I mean, one of the things that happened with us in the casino.
Is it though? Wait. Is it because has Sword Dragon ever been punished for it?
Well, that's true. He hasn't. I was about to say that it sets a bad precedent because then, like, if you need to pick up your organization and like dust yourselves off, like if you're in a scenario where like people might be leaving and it's just an untenable thing, you can always uproot and like move your alliance to another region, which is what we did in the Casino War. But I was gonna say, and I think Asher's right. I was gonna say that if you lie to your people and they find out that you lied to them, that destroys your credibility in the future. But Sword Dragon has never really been punished for that, and I think maybe the reason why he's never been punished for that is that there's so much churn in Darkness.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah.
Well, not just in the game in general. If you lived in a town where 80% of the residents, or have you ever been to a restaurant that's totally in a tourist area? It's often overpriced and the service is bad because no one's coming back. And especially before like Yelp and things existed, there was no incentive at all to offer good customer service.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Like I remember eating, I made a terrible mistake back when I was in college. It wasn't a terrible mistake, but it was a very classic tourist mistake. It was like me and my buddy were in Paris and like we went to a restaurant on the main drag of the Champs-Élysées. I can't actually pronounce it. My French is terrible. I'm very sorry, guys.
I believe it's Champs-Élysées.
Yes, the Champs-Élysées or something like that. But anyway, it was a tourist restaurant, and it was very much like incredibly overpriced, and the food was just bad. Like it was like Pizza Parlor in America, but the pizza hasn't been fresh, bad. And they just didn't care. They knew that like their business model did not need you to be happy. They knew that you were going to come to the restaurant because it was in this big area and you had a nice view and you could say that you went to this restaurant and it was before Yelp. That was the year 2000. But yeah, so I guess Darkness and Sword Dragons alliances are kind of like that. It's a bunch of random people like Kenshin of all people, and if you're rubbing shoulders with Kenshin and Vlade Randall, you obviously don't give a shit about who the quality of person you're dealing with in an alliance is. So it doesn't really matter if Sword Dragon is lying to you because you're probably going to go off to CO2 or what used to be MOA or Ranger Regiment or some other completely random D tier renter alliance. So
Well,
yeah,
this game, like, there's people who have institutional memory who are in leadership. Like the people who are sitting here right now talking. But this game has even for a game that doesn't have a lot of churn, it has a lot of churn compared to anything like real life. Like there, when we looked back at even our leadership, there were like 2 directors from 2014 who had joined in 2014, and there were like 8 in 2015 and 12 in 2016 and 18 in 2017, something like that. It's all very stacked to the new. People move on. So as long as there are more people joining the game, then they don't have that memory. They don't know who you are, and they're not going to be able to discern whether you're a good alliance to join or not. And so maybe there's no reason not to lie to your dudes.
yeah.
Would it be fair to say that like Reddit has a lot more impact and stuff like that now than it ever used to?
Yeah.
Because the newer players, they're slightly younger. They read Reddit, and so if they see the alliance they've just joined, getting shit on by like the 1,000 active members of Reddit, then yeah, you're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. And it's weird for me to say that rather than to just immediately start frothing at the mouth and having blood shooting out of my eyes in a rage. But, I do think that there is, in a way, it seems like Reddit itself has kind of matured since like the really early battle days. I'm still not a fan, but it does seem to be more. Um, there are more voices, I guess. Like Reddit used to be really just like the guys from Test were all over Reddit, and that was that. And now there's a lot
If you
more
go read the
factions and balance.
SAE forum, it's like the same 10 people talking. So
Yeah, we were as a group, we were late on realizing the importance of Reddit. There were some statements even like in 2015, 2016 that were, looking back, look silly now in retrospect.
Oh, I mean, I was on the wrong side of history on that one. Like, there's no question about that. Like, I didn't like some of the people who were really big on Reddit to begin with, and then I was just like frothingly hostile to anything associated with REve. I'm still, mob mentalities are always something that are dangerous, but it's just strange. Like, Karma Fleet has been a huge success. Ascendancy has been a huge success. We have done really well with Reddit-based organizations in Goonswarm, and that's just I'm old, right, when it comes down to it. Like it's June 23rd, so I turned 40 in like a little bit less than a month now. So I'm just I'm that grandfather sitting there with a shotgun and a rocking chair yelling, "Get off my website." um,
Back in
so
my day, we used to go on a forum where everyone posted.
Yeah, exactly. Back in my day, we used forums. We would use dial. I mean, I grew up. My first like internet experience was before the internet, and using a dial-up to connect to BBSs using a fucking modem, and playing Trade Wars 2002 BBS games and shit like that. So, yeah, basically, hippity hoppity, get the fuck off my property. That's fantastic. Um, all right, so. Yeah, that's I guess we sort of went from shitting on Star Citizen to shitting on Sort Dragon. Um, I, I I don't know. It's going to be curious to see what happens there because it's been very rare. This is something I've said a few times in the meta show. It is very rare. Oh, also we're going to go into subscribers only mode, cool kids only mode here in a second, and we've got a fun transition. But before we press that button, I'll say one thing. Uh, you know, it is unusual to see the level of pressure that is being put on alliances like MOA and everybody else in Guardians of the Galaxy, because typically in EVE Online's history. When an entity is put under that much pressure, and they are at that breaking point where corps are leaving and alliances are fighting for leadership and stuff like that, typically by this point, an invading force moves in and takes the space. So you don't normally see a situation where an alliance is just fucked and broken and people are running for the hills without somebody coming in and just removing, clearing the chessboard and, conquering the territory.
That's what
So
they expect us to do. They're hyped up. They've probably got the post ready. I'd say if you announced like today we were going to the north, Salt Dragon would have this 5,000 word essay ready, hyping his dudes up
yeah,
because he's got it ready because that's what he expects. But we're just there to
we're just
kill
hunting
you.
them. Like
Yeah.
it's like
we're,
a game
we're sitting on their
preserve.
chest. We're sitting on their chest. That's, and it's much worse. They would rather just get in a straight up fight and be able to call all their bat phones. This happened the other day. We had I had formed up a fleet of Ishtars, and we had 110 in fleet. And GUTG formed up a fleet of Ishtars. They had 130 in fleet, but they had more like support. So we had the exact same number of Ishtars. They had more Logi. There's never that even a fight in Eve. And then MC showed up in a Serb fleet, and NC showed up in a Gila fleet. So yeah, it was. We still won the fight, by the way.
I just pressed a button, and thank you guys again for creating these amazing transitions. We have a new transition with no sound for it, but we just posted that. That is our official like Q&A time. We now have for the Cool Kids mode. We have like I'm gonna play it again because that was just neat and I liked it. Our new question and answers.
We're gonna sound added to it eventually. But yeah.
Yeah, well, this is just like early WIP.
Yeah.
So yeah, like a lot of times when we have this section of the show, like it's not like a full fireside where we're able to take like everybody's Q&A, because sometimes what'll happen is, we'll answer one question, or we'll think about something, and then we'll just talk for 15 minutes like jerks. But you have an opportunity, to ask questions. But since we don't have any questions yet, it's just Cool Kids mode. Let's, I know, I really don't. One thing we might see if we keep putting pressure on the north and the invasion doesn't come, because here's the thing, like here are the facts for anybody who happens to be in Guardians of the Galaxy that happens to catch this, is compared to Delve, your space sucks, right? Compared to Delve and the Galactic Southwest, the shit that's in the north just blows ass, which is again, one of my errors in the Casino War is as soon as the terrain changed and they rebalanced moons, I should have uprooted the entire Imperium and moved us to the Galactic Southwest. But I was stubborn, and that's what it was. So during the Casino War, we should have headed to the south, but we didn't. But now there's no reason for us to invade the Northwest. Like there's no reason to take or do anything up there, because it blows ass geographically and strategically. So yeah, there is no invasion coming.
Declan, like jump range wise, Declan is terrible. Moon wise, I don't think it's as good. It's just we've spent. I don't know if we can say this, but we've spent trillions in like just putting down citadels and moon mining structures that people use. We don't make any money from them.
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, it's true. Like we've just been investing in the infrastructure. Hilder for also 40 months. Goddamn, dude. We got a question here, which is sort of related to this, which is really asks, how are we looking at filling up Delve before we need more land? And that's one of the creepy things. Speaking of the Delve time unit, is we're not anywhere close to capacity in Delve, right? The innovation of the locus. What's that?
We were for a while. It was getting to the point where like all anoms were kind of getting full, especially after they changed it to the 5-hour respawn. We were like, okay, I was thinking, okay, this is starting to be a problem. And they added the moons, and we just had like 5,000 more moons we can just mine.
Yeah. The moons really changed things, because using the fracking system, and we have our moon timers, and it's us, we're organized, so we've got a whole system to show people where to go to get mined. We have pasture moons, which aren't owned by anybody, they're owned by the state, and those are just free-for-alls for everybody in the Imperium to go nuts and mine like crazy. So there's no longer any conflicts over anomalies. It's a bonanza. And the other thing is that like because of the innovation of the locust fleet, we can now despoil and exploit other regions in a very efficient once a month sort of way. So instead of going like, oh well, you don't need to move people into Quarius to live. You don't need to move people into Fountain to live. You just have to go there once a month and with like 200 Rorquals and just strip mine the region and then go back to Delve. So that's yet another reason why we have, more than enough room in Delve as it currently stands.
It just got stronger as well because you don't have to worry about someone coming in and toasting your stations because the ADM's low. TCUs don't really matter. iHubs don't even matter really anymore if people aren't living in the space. So you just show up once a month and mine moons with like 200 rock balls.
For only a few hours too, because when
It takes 3 hours, and in that 3 hours we mine about 400 to 500 billion ISK of moon.
Yeah, I am. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you could see the Imperium expand. But it would be the logical places for us to expand would be like, we haven't even really set up locust fleets for Fountain, right? Like we're not even there yet. So it's really sort of a slow creeping like glacier. Like we don't really do big fancy fast moves. Like our campaign up north has been going off and on for fuck, dude. I think it's been almost a year now, Asher. What do you think? How long have we been doing like harassment campaigns and deployments to the north?
It kind of snowballed. It started out with there were dreads up north left over with insurance after Hakonin, and so guys just wanted to use those before the insurance ran out, and then it was like, wow, there's a lot of easy kills over here, and it just snowballed from there.
That makes sense. This sort of dovetails into a question here from Kantu the Ninja, or the Nunja, I should say, which is: do you think the enemies of the Imperium will ever grow a backbone and declare war on us, and be the ones to attack us in our space? Um, I'd say eventually, if there was enough of a push to do it, I could see it. Whenever you say that it couldn't happen, then you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Like one of the things we saw in the Galactic Northwest during the Casino War, before the Casino War, was this idea that, oh, the Imperium is invulnerable, don't attack the CFC, blah blah blah. Um, the game could change. The reason why the Casino War happened and people were able to go after us is the Fozzysoft system made the place that we were in untenable. Right now, attacking the Imperium and attacking Delve in particular would be foolish. It would be like fighting uphill in the snow while you're also getting repeatedly set on fire while drinking unfiltered water. you
Think
know,
of this: you can only. So if you were to deploy to Delve, we were talking about this last night on comms after a fleet because we were pretty bored. If you were to attack Delve, you can only realistically hit one keep star a week because it comes out on one day at one time. Unless you want to, split up your forces, which is dumb. You want to get one keep star a week, so that's 20 weeks of a deployment just to kill our keep stars.
If you succeed on every single one.
If you succeed on every single one.
And assuming that we don't put more down, because I think we're
I think we're even past 20 now, so it's probably
we're
like
like
24,
27,
25.
28, I think.
But what? Half a year. You've got to spend nearly 6 months fucking trying to evict us from a region.
Yeah, CCP really does need to address time zone tanking. Like, there are people who want to go out and fight, and that's good for the game. Like, I fully support people fighting, but the way that groups currently time their things to places they don't actually exist in, just to deny it to other people, it's the most effective strategy. But I don't think CCP should allow it. Like, it's CCP's choice to allow it, and people are going to do it if it's allowed. But it stymies 90% of fights before they ever happen.
I'm sure you're hurting your own members as well, because I'm sure people would like to log in for fleets and defend what's theirs, but they just can't because 10 o'clock on Wednesday they have to go to work.
I think I actually just had an idea of how you could. I mean, you guys might have had this idea before, but just I had a brain fart of how you could actually mechanically do that. As I mean, CCP has the data to track when a player's most primary time zone of play is, right? Like if you're logging into the game with this account and you're playing, you have an average, you have a median point as to what your players main time zone is, and you could actually aggregate that information for an alliance's member to find kind of like their midpoint, and then you could simply say that timers could only be set within an 8-hour range of your average alliance's midpoint.
I thought of that before, but then what we would do is we would make alt alliances where we only put characters in Australian time zone, but so what I suggest is that it's timed to the activity in your space. So when people are mining or ratting in your space, that sets the median time. So it can be in a 4-hour block within the highest level
That makes
of
sense. So
that time.
you have like a bell curve of ratting and mining activity within
Yeah.
a space, and in that
And
bell curve, you have a range of when it's possible to set timers.
it would also make denial an actual strong tactic because you can
Oh,
go in and
because you'd
deny
fuck with
them,
people's time zone then by doing
and
that.
then this is going to turn on some Thetans. You could send in offensive PvP fleets to change their timers. So you'd be putting
Ah.
your ships out to be attacked, but if they
Mining
can't do it
decrement
or
to lower
won't,
their switch their Von timers.
exactly.
Oh, yeah. So basically, like, okay, you're a bunch of Australians, but we're going to camp you out of your territory in Australian time zone. We're going to come
You're,
mine in your territory in U.S. time
yeah,
zone. So suddenly your
you're hot
timers are
dropping
U.S. time
prospects
zone.
into.
Right.
Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit there, but you're hot dropping prospects into to mine their space to switch it.
Wow. That's a fantastic idea. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, and it would. How many times have we been in a meeting saying, "Hey, we could go hit this space," and then you pull it up and like, "Oh, it's time to Australian time zone. I have a job. I cannot do that." But the alliance isn't Australian time zone. You know, they're just doing it to discourage people from hitting their space.
Yeah. They're just
That's
doing
not
it
a
for like fuck you, nobody wants to play at this time, and so it just raises the effort threshold with no cost. Like that's the thing is that they haven't done any work to be able to set that time zone, right? If there was some
right.
sort of like
Yeah,
hoops you could jump through, an effort that you could do, like if you're going to be like, okay, we're going to log on, and we're going to do ratting and mining ops to like boost our defense in this off time zone, then they would have at least worked to have earned that
exactly. I agree.
defense.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and people would do that, but that would be interesting. It would put people in space, and it would make it valuable, and it would make your PVE an important part of it, and it is now as a part of your backbone, but it's not part of a strategic sense, and that would give an interesting thing. Like if ratters became important like that, you would say, hey, we should defend these people rather than, oh, these dudes are idiots, just let them die.
Yeah, I like the idea of like having a scenario where offensive PvE actually would make an impact, right? And I think that's fascinating. Huh. Very curious. All right, well, let's see what we got here. We're coming up towards the end of the show. I want to see if there's anything else that we want to. Oh, brief shout out here. Actually, we have a newbie FC of ours. Jay, can you dig up the link for this and drop it in chat? One of our
Yeah,
newbie FCs.
Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I see it now.
One of our newbie FCs went up north and found 10 PL Rorquals and blew them up. And speaking of Australian time zone, and did this. What's strange about this battle report is that I was expecting, having seen one PL Rorqual was enough to set off a huge issue. 10 PL Rorquals. Headliner has not raged out at anybody and kicked them out of PL, and nothing that they have has been stolen yet. So maybe PL is just adjusting to the realities of being a Rorqual alliance. I don't know. Good shit. But shout outs to everybody who was on that op. Good kills. Any last words, Asher?
I am good. Thanks. I thought it was a fun show. It was actually, we had less to talk about, so we could talk about more, if that makes sense. So
It does make a lot of sense. We got to speculate more. Jay?
I don't really know what to say.
Okay, that
sorry.
in and of itself is fine.
It's a summary of the last hour for Jay.
Yeah. That's okay. We love you anyway. All right, boys and girls. Well, thanks for coming. So next week, Boat will be back, and I will be gone. Actually, I'm going to be on a camping trip, so I will not be here next week. But thank you all for coming, and thank you to our subscribers for being part of the Cool Kids Clubs. We really do appreciate you throwing multiple dollars at the screen for the multi-dollar media empire. And we will be back next week. Thank you to Asher and Jay, and I think that's it. I think we're done with shoutouts, and I will play the music.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching the Meta Show.